Okay, cool. So, yeah, thanks everyone. First of all, welcome to the ADDC conference. It's a pleasure to be here, actually. I woke up like super early this morning to finish up my slides. That's always happened. I never learn out of that. So basically, it was a bit challenging to prepare this talk. Because first of all, because I wanted to prepare something super high level, because it is very nice to reunite developers and designers in a conference. So 2 months ago, more or less, I came up with this title, which sounds cool. But then 1 week ago, I didn't even know what I was going to talk about. Because I usually like to, leave the title open and then, all right, prepare something on the go, collect feedback, and so forth. So, all right, it's not working or what? Okay, cool. So there's going to be a disclaimer. This is the first one, actually. It's incredible the amount of information that we find in the web, right? You can actually learn how to create ugly presentations. And I think that's what I learned. So please, you can judge, by the end of this presentation. But yeah, keep in mind that I'm more a developer. You know what that means, right? All right, why is it not working there? So okay, cool. This was the my original cover presentation. The cover of the presentation. For me, it's beautiful. I mean, this is, as an engineer, it's everything what I can come up with, It's a very, you remember like GeoCities? Like, this GeoCities style website, with all these GIFs and so forth. So I came up with this one. Actually, I mean, the green thing was blue, so it was even worse. So with that being said, I'm going to quickly introduce myself. My name is Fernando Cejas. This is my Twitter account. I try to be active. I usually post stuff around software engineering and mostly technical stuff. I'm a curious learner, as probably many of you here. Okay. Software engineer again, part of core engineering at SoundCloud. That's why for me it was a bit challenging to be here, because I wanted to expose, my experience, back in the days when working on user-facing features. I'm no longer doing that, but I'm going to get back to it later on. Yes, I'm a speaker. I'm here again, and this is my blog. If you're curious about, stuff, software engineering related. Probably I'm going to write something after the conference, so it would be nice to have some feedback afterwards. Cool. Okay, so another thing, why this talk? This talk comes from an article, actually, that I read some time ago, and the author of that article, it's an Australian designer. She's called Kelly Timpani, and she actually wrote about collaboration, or basically how designers or how developers can help out designers in a daily job. It's pretty curious because when you're researching on the internet, you always find stuff related to how designers help developers, or how they can make our lives easier, but not the other way around. So she came up with a few ideas, and so I just wanted to give a special mention to her because it's really cool, and it's on the reference slide, so I really recommend you to read it. This is going to be a very high-level talk. I already talked about design, surprisingly. The last time I did it seriously, and keep that in mind, seriously, was in 2013. And when, I'm mostly focused on Android, but still slowly jumping into iOS. But back in those days, when Android didn't have guidelines. So, and Google came up with a bunch of guidelines to create Android apps. So I started investigating a little bit more, and I came up with this talk. Then that was like 4 years ago. That was a serious talk, not like this one. You will see why. Okay. So then, in 2015, I talked again about the material design. But I'm not. The reason why I said seriously is because during that talk, I was completely drunk. I barely remember that, and I had to watch the video. The video is on YouTube, so you can judge yourself. Basically, the reason was because we had a conference party the previous night. So I'm so sorry for people who are speaking tomorrow very early because of the vote party. Yeah, that happens. And so I barely slept there. And actually, with my friend Jorge, we gave this talk. And actually, what we had to ask the conference to put the lights down because I was like, the light was coming right here. So that was the last time, basically. And we are actually wearing sunglasses, and we did that during the talk. And those sunglasses are not really sunglasses. They're like these €2 glasses for watching 3D movies, because it's the only thing that we could find there. So, yeah. And there's another disclaimer. Again, I'm a full software engineer. I'm not working with designers now, but that's why, honestly, this talk made me understand a little bit better how we are currently working at SoundCloud with design. I gained a lot of knowledge out of that after talking to our designers, to understand how they work, how they move around features, and how they perform their job. So with that being said, I definitely, when it comes to product, in the end, product has been evolving over the years, right? I mean, back in the days, product had a very linear development process. It was going to go from the requirements to the design, and then that design would go to developers and so forth. But nowadays, the communication, goes in different directions, right? I mean, the flow, goes from one side to the other because of the current methodologies. Applications are way more complex. Requirements are bigger, right? And but with that being said, a product involves many parts, right? Involves business, involves marketing, involves development, and many other things. But this talk is basically about designers and developers. And the reason, not the reason actually. When you started investigating all these parts involved in a product creation, then you come up with different concepts. I definitely like to define the main concept of my talk, usually. So in this case, for me, design, when you're talking about design, means like a lot of things, actually. And as developers, usually we have the concept of a designer as someone who sits down in front of a Photoshop or like a tool or whatever, and that's not true anymore, at least. So after investigating, I came up with a bunch of different concepts, like UI design, interaction design, visual design, and actually that brings up a question here. How many of you are designers here? Can you just raise your hand? Okay, cool. Oh, nice. Developers? And product managers? Okay, cool. Something else? Okay, cool. Good to know. So I guess we are all familiar with these concepts. But the thing is, like, after this investigation, I came up with a concept that really fits on what I think a design, or what design is in the end. And for me, it's like, this guy, who is called Kevin Tomaso, came up with this definition. And it says, like, UI design is all about getting users as familiar with your app without requiring a big effort, without requiring brain power. That really fits on what I think about a product or what a product should like. When it comes, but then there's this concept of like someone introduced herself to me, and she actually said, "I'm a mobile product designer." And so I was curious about, what is a mobile product designer? Is that related to design, specifically the UI part, or what? And she basically said that, okay, no, hold on. So basically she said that she's the one that puts all the pieces in place when it comes to creating great products. She has knowledge on every single part involved, but she's not a project manager. She's not a product manager either, and she basically assembles the puzzle. She's able to grab Photoshop to Sketch or to whatever, in order to, she has knowledge on the tooling, but she's known a deep knowledge on implementation, which is like software development, but still she's able to figure out things. So, when it comes to all these concepts around design, for me it was like a bit confusing at some point. And my conclusion is like everything is about creating a great product, right? And you can tell this because of Dyson. Dyson is the brand behind this hand dryer. It's not about the wow factor for me. It's about like, grabbing something and making it better and iterating over it and, learning and continuously improve it. And so basically they came up with this great product. I mean, it's very, if you start like diving into it, it's very complex what it's doing. I mean, it sounds like a hand dryer. It's only just, I don't know, it's a fan kind of that dries your hand. But like, it's not only that. There's like way more involved. They also have like some kind of bacteria killer or something that, it's a special mechanism that deals with this bacteria that comes out of our hands. So it's great. But when it comes to software development, I mean, for me, maybe it's because I'm a software developer, but it was way easier to define what a software engineer is. We have a software engineer, we have software developer, what is coding, concepts that are very, normal for me, and I think it's not very hard to understand. This is how Wikipedia defines software engineering. I'm not going to dive deeper into it, but just like wanted to put it there, just for extra information. But again, this is, I would say, a love-hate story between designers and developers. And oh, my mind got blank. Yes, because I know. Okay, cool. There we go. So this story about like usually starts, I think, from my perspective, and I'm pretty sure that many of you have experienced this with this job underestimation. For me, it's like there's a lot of job underestimation between developers and designers. Especially, I remember like sitting down in front of my computer, and my designer just came over, and she said, "I mean, you can change that animation. That must be super easy to do." And it's just like, not really. It's not as it looks like. And it's the same from my side. When she had to create a new asset or something, for me would be like, all right, maybe you can create that in 2 minutes. And it's not. I think there is a problem with underestimating jobs here from both sides. I have problems with my... Okay. So my question here is like how we can work together. What are the key things that we need to keep in mind in order to work in harmony with between developers and designers? And let me put the brain here. So I think we have different skill sets. On one hand, probably we have more developed the right side of our brain. The left side as developers, which is the logical part. And then designers, for me, are very creative. And I think that's what design is about, creativity. We both have creativity in mind, but in the different ways. But for me, the brain makes the perfect fit, to work as a team between developers and designers. And that's why I wanted to flag this picture. And that's why that brings me to a love story here. This is part of my personal experience. And after researching a little bit, there are 7 stages in a love story. It's very interesting because, even there's different types of love, depending on the hormones that you spread when you're in love or whatever. It's very curious. So I just wanted to put like a love story with trying to explain a little bit each stage and how that fits within a developers and designer story or relationship, let's say. So I'm going to start with stage 1. So this was curious because when I said, all right, so you're single, you do all by yourself, right? Everything by yourself. Just get rid of all those bad thoughts that you probably have in your mind, but you do everything yourself alone. And that's very curious because what happened, if you translate that into a designer-developer's relationship, then it's just like you're trying to create a great product, but you're by yourself. And sometimes you're alone. Many times you're alone. You feel like, all right, I need a partner. How can I deal with this? And there's going to be a wave of gifts. I like to use them. So you try to come up with something, but it's just like, it's super tough because you cannot do everything yourself. So what happens? When you're a designer, you're a developer, and you try to be a designer, this is what happens. This is the best design that you can do as a developer. I know a few developers that are good at designing things, but that would be my best attempt in order to design something. These colors are amazing. I have my design eye there. And what happens? The other way around. Like when a designer tries to be a developer. I'm not saying that. I also know that designers that code really good, but you're out of your territory here, right? And you end up coding bug-free applications. I'm not saying that we don't, create bugs, but in the end, I think, again, we have a little bit more knowledge. So at some point in time, you're by yourself, right? You're single, everything looks good. You try to, but you need a partner, right? So that's when we have stage 2, the date. And the date means a couple of things. So you need to find someone. And then, I don't know, there are so many options, there are so many ways. Batman, for example, used bad Tinder in order to find a partner. So basically, at this stage is when you need a partner. In order to create a great product, you need to date someone, let's say, and you get a match. At some point you get a match and you say, oh, that's my people, that's my person, that's my designer, that's my developer, and this guy shows up. So what happens after that? You're creating your product, From being single, you start using these apps, which seems to be the 2.0 way of getting to know people. I don't think I'm going to use Tinder to, search for designers, but you never know, right? Look at Batman. So that's the time when you have a match, then you say, all right, I do want to work with this person, right? And basically, we need each other. That's the goal here. Like, we definitely need each other in order to create great things. We have different skill sets, and that's the purpose of it. Like, we can work as a team and come up with cool things. So after you decide that you want to work with this person, it's like, everything seems better, seems kind of perfect. All right, you're really compatible with you. So it's like when you want to engage with the other person, right? And there's love involved here, There's this love factor that you love working with the other person. Everything seems perfect in the beginning, as usual. I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with that. Everything is perfect. You definitely like to work with the other person. You come up, with cool features together. You attend conferences together. Everything is pixel perfect. Bad joke. Or I don't know, when you talk about bytecode manipulation, it's just like, oh, I love you. Bytecode manipulation, it's amazing. And functional programming, oh, today, you know what, I created this, function that performs super well and within our algorithm, oh my God, and everything is like, it's nice. But, when everything is nice, that's easier, right? That's very easy because everything seems to be perfect. There's a good atmosphere. You can work together. But you start having the first discussions after some point. And that means, not really, being disrespectful, but, you have different opinions and there's some issues always. That always happens until you get to know each other, right? So let's recap a little bit. You're single, then you find someone you want to work with because you need it, you want to create something cool. You propose that person to work with you or whatever. You can also have a long-distance relationship and, work with remote teams, let's say. But still, you want to work together. But at some point in time, after you start, making progress on your product, a lot of issues come over. You start to get to know each other a little bit deeper. And what happens is like, here is one thing. There's the first bifurcation here. That's what the research said. At some point, when you start having the first discussions and, you have issues, then you have two paths here in a relationship. And it says, like, you can retire and live together forever, or you can break up, right? Again, this is the easy part, because everything seems perfect. You're successful. You want to continue with this, team or whatever. But then there's an overall happiness, of course. But this is the problem, the breakup. What happens? The reason why I'm here today is to try to avoid this breakup, basically. And this brings up a lot of topics related to human behavior. And, what are the pillars of any relationship? Let's say, not even talking about your partner or your designer, but, it's related to any, like even when you're with your family and so forth. And so the breakup, that's the sad part, right? Is when you say, all right, so I have a few options here, so it didn't work out. We are really having issues. At least you should have like some lessons learned out of it. And again, like how can we avoid this part? And why this happens in the end? Why this is really bringing us, issues to the relationship? Yeah, there we go. First of all, respect. I think nowadays, I've seen like so many places where respect is not respected. Um, And I think that's key in any relationship. You have to respect both sides. I mean, of course, you have to be respectful with anyone. That will make you a better professional, of course. Um, but then, of course, like communication is also key here. Why? I mean, imagine this relationship between developers and designers. You want to communicate early on. You're working on a cool project, and you want to communicate with each other in order to, I don't know, draw the line, or like, let's say from the developer's side, to tell the designer what's viable and what's not, and from the designer side too, what's viable and what's not. There must be honesty involved as well. I mean, we have to be honest, always, keeping respect in mind, being able to provide constructive feedback. You have to care about the other person. We are working together. There's no reason to just like, I don't know, it's us and them. It's just that you need to get rid of that mindset. It's not important. If you're a developer or designer, you're there to team up and to come up with something cool and to create a good atmosphere. Be responsible for your acts as well and for your job. And that means, again, becoming a better professional. Know how to say or when to say no to something. And be patient. We don't know everything, right? So we need to be patient, especially when we're working with junior people. We are experiencing. Sometimes you can always learn out of anyone, right? I mean, I think like when working with junior people, those are the best people. Let's say like they ask the best questions. They make you think. Like sometimes you're sitting down just doing something, and it's just like, why you're doing this? It's like, oh yeah, you're right. That was a good question. And so I think in any human relationship, we need to keep this in mind, these pillars. They're very important to work in harmony. I think, you can be the best designer in terms of technical skill sets, but if you're an asshole, let's say, you're not going to be a good professional. You might struggle working with other people. So, I mean, if you ask me, I would say, in my opinion, I would definitely prefer, people that have less skill sets, technically speaking, but they are better persons. And with that in mind, I just wanted to come up with, more tangible stuff. It's again, for me, the human part is the most important one, but like in terms of tooling or in terms of how we as developers can help designers, I came up with a bunch of bullet points here. I think we, from any early stage in a product, we need to transmit the know-how. Again, the restrictions, the constraints that we have when we need to develop something. And I think that's very important. It's not about like, all right, I will take care of it. Like, I think it's worth to transfer knowledge to designers from a developer perspective. Again, I think I'm not expecting, designers to know in detail how things work under the hood, but still, I want to know then, for example, let's say, how Android or iOS render things on screen. I think that's very important because it's going to make the designer to design based on that, Oops. I mean, this applies to everything, right? I mean, to any relationship, any situation in life. Always provide uh, constructive feedback, but in terms of design, I mean, I'm not. You can see, what I came up with, like this green and I don't know, pink colors, which are ugly, but it's still, I have a view. I have a perspective as well. Maybe it's a very technical perspective, but I think it's always important to transmit that. For example, we know about the technologies and we know about the platforms. And if you ask me about design and in my field, I would say material design. I'm aware of what is possible and what is not. And so I think this is the way that we can help designers. We need to transmit that knowledge. And we have different perspectives, again. I'm a developer, and I think, from the other side, I mean, a designer should embrace that, and not saying like, they should welcome this feedback, actually. Oops. So this is the main points from a developer's perspective for me. What happens when it's the other way around? How can a designer help me out with my day-to-day job? For me, it's very important. Like if we can use a version control system, I think that's key because there is only one place where we have the latest deliverables, the assets or whatever, and not usually say, all right, just use this, Dropbox folder, and then, or all the time just use Google Drive or whatever. That's another point. Sometimes I felt, this is my experience, and I would definitely appreciate and catch up with some designers here to talk about these vectors and scalable effects, because in Android it's the thing. We struggle a bit with that because of different screen sizes and densities. So I think we should definitely keep everything as vectors. We have something on Android which is called 9-patch. This is a nightmare, actually, to make assets scalable. But I would definitely like some input here. And use the platform idioms. That's another experience. Probably it's no longer happening that often, but I don't know if you guys probably had the same experience when you need to apply a new design, let's say to Android, and it looks very iOS, I think that's not a platform medium, right? And that's why there are guidelines for both platforms. I think nowadays there's no more important platform than the other. In user-realistic content, that means lorem ipsum is never in the final version. Usually I used to receive some screenshots with lorem ipsum, and it's just like, well, I mean, it's not very likely that you're going to have this in production, right? So I think that's very useful because you want to see how it will really look and feel. And again, apart from the human part, this is more about the processes. I already mentioned what's important for me as a developer, what I can offer to designers from the developer's perspective. And the thing is, like, how can we put all those things together and work as a team? I think we need to establish a clear workflow here. It's not you, it's not me. I mean, let's try to come up with something that works for both of us. Again, for me, getting rid of this mindset of like them and us, it's not going to take us anywhere. So this is important. We need to listen. The other side needs to listen to, and we need to come up with a solution that is compatible for both of us. Never assume it's easy. Again, I think that's a big mistake here. Because sometimes just like, if you don't know, just ask, right? It's not that you go there and like, all right, because maybe you were allocating some time to finish up a specific feature or some change, and then it turns out that it's going to take longer because you didn't communicate that and you assumed that was going to be easy. Don't micromanage. That's another mistake, I think. I'm not, again, it's like you and me, we work together. I don't need to tell you what to do, and you don't need to tell me what to do. We should come up with something together, team up, and achieve our goals. Mutual respect, this is a human part again, but it's more about like respecting other people's job. For me, again, that's the most important part. I mean, I should be able to go and give constructive feedback without, seeing a long face or something like that. And I'm always going to be open to receive good feedback too. And I'm expecting, I'll be here, in the next couple of days, and I'm expecting you to give me some feedback and to catch up with all of you or many of you. Again, collaboration is very important. It's the way to go. And we should create good atmosphere. When you're working in a good environment, that's priceless. And if that works. And again, about creativity, it's not only because usually we tend to say, all right, creativity only sits on one side, which is more like the design side. And I would say it's not true. I mean, we are creative too in another way, but it's nice to keep that in mind. And feedback in order to get better, to be better at our jobs all the time, and not wait till the earlier you provide feedback, the better, and the better products you're going to create. And for me, I know this was a very general talk. I just wanted to wake up your curiosity about specific experience. I wanted to address the human part mainly, because for me that's the biggest issue between working between developers and designers. And I put a couple of phrases here. I quoted them. I'm not going to read them because I'm going to leave that for you, but basically the main idea is to work as a team and work as a unit and move together. This is what happens in any relationship, right? And I think that's pretty much what I have today. Again, feel free to provide me with feedback. I just want to give you the warm welcome to this conference, which is going to be great. I'll be around, and we have like a couple of minutes for Q&A session. If you're interested, you can ask anything about our process or how we can address specific things. I can give you my opinion if I don't know it. But yeah, that's from my side. Thank you.
Wow. What do you use for vector graphics? You said that 9-patch is bad. And do you synchronize vector graphics for iOS and Android in SoundCloud?
We have, I think we are split into feature teams. Well, not, really feature teams, but we have a couple of designers assigned to what we call clusters, right? I think we are free to pick our tool. From the Android side, we try to avoid this tool. I don't want to even mention it because I had like really nightmares with it. I don't know how it's like on the iOS side. Maybe we can have a talk later. But on Android, what basically our designers are doing is we use this tool, Zeppelin. And so I got familiar with that. It was super nice to use it. And they basically were using a version control for that. I don't know what they internally are using for that. I mean, they come up with all these deliverables, which are vectors. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Have you had any cases where you were stuck in one of these stages? Let's say in a team where you were just stuck in the first conflict, and if so, how did you get out of it? Was it external people that need to get in, or?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, not, to be honest, not at SoundCloud, but yeah, in previous experiences. Again, like the reason, I'm not saying that SoundCloud is perfect, but like the reason is because I spent only 1 year working on user-facing features, but in previous experiences, yes, there were these, again, two teams working in isolation. So basically, were developers and designers, and there were a lot of communication problems because we would not provide early feedback in our processes, and then they would assume that they had the real truth, even not taking into account what product would say, and we had a more like cowboy style, let's say, coming from designers, and then that led to developers, do the same thing, in order to come up with the final solution. And basically, in the beginning, we decided to provide constructive feedback, try to get better, try to relocate people, because there were some issues, some friction between people that was created by this environment. And unfortunately, there was a breakup. And from both teams, people they were not fired, but like sooner or later, they ended up just leaving because of this bad situation, basically. I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a little bit my experience. Yeah. Yeah. Breakup, the inevitable happens sometimes.
I'm a bit greedy. I have two questions.
Yes? Go ahead.
The first one is, you said you're not working with designers anymore.
Yes?
And
I'm not happy.
no, elaborate on that point. I mean, why? And what are you doing now then? And second, what motivated you to do this talk more?
Okay.
Working with designers.
Yeah.
Was it the good moments or the bad moments?
All right. Oh, well, nice question then. So the reason why I'm not working with designers is like core engineering at SoundCloud don't have even a product manager. So basically, our users are other developers because we create tools for other developers to make their life easier. So they can basically ship features by using our tools, the tools that we provide. That's one point. The second question is again, I think in my experience, I saw many issues related to, again, the human part. And it's sad to say it, but basically my motivations were the bad moments. And it's not, I mean, from my perspective, not because the issues were coming from either designers or developers, with both. And we ended up having, this weird situation, this weird atmosphere that is very hard to work with, and you're not happy in the end. And so that's why I wanted to transmit something, that at least, be better professionals, but just address the human part, with higher priority rather than the skill sets. And yeah, that was it. I can give you more details about all the bad situations if you're interested in that. Okay? Well, I think it's pretty much then. Again, welcome to this amazing conference. I'm looking forward to catch up with you guys. Just feel free to approach me. I'll definitely be open to get feedback and share more experience and any knowledge. Thank you very much.